Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Radical Show. I'm your host, Radical XD, and I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about my show. So, I've been meaning to start a podcast a while ago, ever since they started popping off all over the internet. I mean, it seems something fun to do, and I've had a little experience in this type of field. For those of you who aren't aware, I do co-host a show at Millikan University on WJMU called Cinema Watchers, where me and my co-host Marky Mark review movies, and we basically just go over stuff that we really enjoy. But this is the Radical Show, so I'll be doing things a lot differently than I would do on the radio show. So, for starters, I want to talk a little bit about myself and what I plan to do for this show. So, this is more like a kind of like a testing project or a prototype, if you will. So, yes, I attend Millikan University, and if things go all right, I'll be graduating this May of 2024, which I'm a bit nervous about, but also excited about because I'm looking forward towards the future. So yeah, it's a new path for me. Definitely something I'm not used to, but it's definitely it's definitely something to think about. You know, you go through all these years in school from elementary to middle to high school, and now here I am. You know, at the end of my education career, and I had so many ups and downs. I remember wanting to stop a few times along the way. Those were kind of rough for me, but yeah, a little bit about myself is that I consider myself a consumer of media entertainment. And what that means is like I love movies, I love television, I love playing video games, and I love reading comic books. And I don't know, I feel like I have a good sense of these things. I think I think some people might, I mean, it might sound egotistical, but I can tell when a movie is good or bad now. You know, when I was like a kid, everything I used to watch, you know, I'm like, if it's not action packed or lasers on screen or colors and stuff, you know, I found stuff boring, you know? And I just thought that's just how all movies are. But, you know, growing up, you realize that these things actually have expectations and that stuff can actually be seen as good or terrible, which you never really think about when you're a kid. But for starters, I am a huge Star Wars fan. So, and in terms of how big of a Star Wars fan, I basically grew up during the prequel era of Star Wars from 2000. I mean, you know, fun fact, I was born in the year 2000. My dad actually took me to go watch Revenge of the Sith when it came out in theaters. I believe I was, what, 3, 4 at the time? It came out in what, 2005? Yeah, no, I was definitely 4 years old. But I remember all the merchandise out there with Darth Vader, Anakin, Obi-Wan. It was definitely, I think, in my opinion, one of the best times to be a Star Wars fan when you're a kid. And I grew up with everything, with all the Star Wars video games. I mean, Battlefront, Bounty Hunter, Republic Commando, Force Unleashed, even the original Lego Star Wars. Like, it was definitely one of the greatest or one of the best times in my life as a kid. You know, Star Wars this, Star Wars that. You know, I'm a big Star Wars fan. You know, Boba Fett, he's like an all time favorite Star Wars character for me, even though he never really had a role to play in the original trilogy. You know, he looked cool, he had some real cool lines, and I mean, come on, you just look at the guy and you're like, that's a badass. Like he's awesome. And yeah, so I would like to dive into how I feel about the new Disney Star Wars ever since Disney bought it back in, I don't even know what year it was. Maybe it was 2012, 15, 13. I don't know. My memory doesn't serve me right, and I don't have all the facts. I'm coming to you as the perspective of a fan who's simply grown up with the series throughout these many, many years. So, the plans for this podcast with the Radical Show, and like I said, this is more like a prototype. One could argue it's definitely for a grade for some class, in order for me to graduate, but I don't see it that way. I work at a media studio called the Suite 704. I basically work as like a background editor or a photographer for events, and it's definitely something I never expected myself to be doing in my later years. I mean, I'm a Spider-Man fan, and I never thought of myself as being someone like Peter Parker, where I go to some gallery or some event where I just take pictures. But I'm literally Peter Parker in those moments. So I went to some art gallery, and I was just taking pictures, and I was like, wow, I'm really doing what Peter was doing in like Spider-Man 2. So it's like, it's crazy. It's really crazy to think about. But within the Suite 704, the studio that I work at, I've gotten to work with a lot of amazing people, especially my mentor. And I also saw how making a podcast can be really fun, especially when you have a co-host. But as of right now, I don't exactly have a stage, like a setting, like a couch and a background. So for starters, this is the introduction to the Radical Show. Hopefully, I can get some guests on here, whether they be family or friends or people who just love to talk about the same things that I do. But this show is mostly just to talk about stuff I love in general, whether it be movies, video games, shows, comics. It doesn't matter. I'm just here to talk about whatever comes across my mind. And I doubt we'll ever see anything political in these podcasts because I'm not really a political person. I don't dive much into that. I might be a bit arrogant and oblivious to that stuff, but I just pay attention to stuff that, catches my eye, stuff that I like and enjoy. So, as a Star Wars fan throughout the semester, I will be sharing many of my opinions on movies and shows within the series, but it can definitely be more than just that. The future, I believe, is to, create shows or episodes where I'll be reviewing movies in-depth detail. And what I mean by that is I would essentially, for example, The Force Awakens. There's a lot that can be said about that movie, and it would be nice to go into depth about how I feel about that movie and its many plot elements, especially with its characters and all that stuff, and even some of the behind the scenes drama. So, for the moment, this is simply a quick preview into the future. I have a lot to say about the Star Wars sequels, from Episode 7 to The Last Jedi to Rise of Skywalker. I think the quickest review I can give about this movie, something I can say in like just a few seconds. It's like Force Awakens, okay, good, decent, take it how you want. Last Jedi, confusing, mind-boggling, perhaps bad. And Rise of Skywalker, you know, no spoiler. You know what? A bit spoil. If you don't want to know what my opinions are on that movie, you can skip ahead like maybe like a minute or two. But for those of you who do want to know, I absolutely hate that movie, and I will talk about my hatred for that movie on a future video. So yeah. But my quick thoughts on Star Wars, obviously I grew up during the prequel era, prequel, Clone Wars, all that. I mean, I literally remember being on Cartoon Network, watching it as a kid, and there was like a literal countdown for the very first episode of Star Wars: The Clone Wars. And when I saw Yoda and those clones and them going against all them battle droids and those tanks, I was hooked. I was hooked just like that. And Star Wars: The Clone Wars did not disappoint me as a kid. I remember not missing a single episode because that's how invested I was in that show. I showed up every, what was it, Saturday, Friday night? I don't even remember. But I was there for every new episode and I watched it, I had a little rough patch at the start of season 3, but I eventually got back there. A funny thing, I don't think a lot of people know this, but when I was watching the Clone Wars back when I was like in 5th grade, in America, we were already on season 5, I believe. Yes, season 5 was airing in America, and I was watching it. And then during that time, I went to Mexico to visit my family for the first time over there because I'd never been. And I remember being with my cousin, and he was like, "Oh, there's a brand new episode of the Clone Wars," and I'm like, "Oh, let's go, let's watch it," you know. And then and then we sit down on the couch and we start watching it, and he's in the middle of the Umbara arc from season 4, which I thought was hilarious because I mean it was both funny, but also weird how in Mexico they were literally a season behind, and they were calling it new episodes, which I thought was weird, but a little interesting. But yes, I want to keep these podcasts a bit short, maybe like 15 to 20 minutes. It really depends on what I want to talk about, but yeah, I definitely see myself talking more about the sequels and probably the TV shows that have been coming out recently. And we can even delve into some Marvel and DC stuff. Maybe Marvel, because there's a lot more to talk about with the recent MCU, because it's not looking so good after Endgame. I will say that, but yes, um, for the moment, I don't think there's much to say. I'm really hoping to get a decent setup, maybe a camera, so I can present myself to the audience. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to the Radical Show. You know, I to be able to sit down and just talk about something you love and just present it to people. You know, share your opinions out there. And I know everyone has their own opinions, and it can get very chaotic there. And I won't lie, I've been known to be quite a toxic Star Wars fan. You know, I be screaming at people, "No, you're wrong, I'm right," and stuff. But not with the Radical Show. You know, all I'm gonna be doing is presenting my feelings about how I feel about these recent projects. And if you want to enjoy the sequels or any of the new projects, feel free to do so. Do not don't believe that someone like me could just be like, "Oh no, you're 100% wrong," because you know we all love what we love. I mean, you know, when I was a kid, I loved SpongeBob. My dad hated it, but that didn't stop me from loving SpongeBob. You know what I mean? But yeah, I don't know why I thought of that. It's just something weird that came to mind. But yes, so unfortunately for this first Radical Show, this will be a purely audio show. There is no camera. I am working on getting a camera set up. I'm just looking for like a tripod with my Nikon and maybe a flash drive to save all my video clips in. But you guys don't need to know about the behind the scenes stuff. You know, it's just editing mumbo jumbo. You know, but yeah, I'm really excited to be sharing my thoughts with you all. And thank you for tuning in to the Radical Show. I'll see you next time. Yep.